Have you ever felt like you were left behind by the people who should have cared for you the most? Like they made decisions for you without ever asking what you needed, what you wanted. Imagine being 16, abandoned at a train station by your own parents. Not because of an accident, not because they forgot, but because they thought it was the best way to teach you a lesson. I know this might sound unbelievable, but for Abigail, it was her reality. Hi, I'm Abigail, and let me take you back to a moment in my life that completely changed everything. A moment when my parents, the very people who were supposed to love and protect me, decided that the lesson they wanted to teach me was worth more than the love I thought I deserved. They left me at a train station alone with nothing but my thoughts and a heavy heart. But that was just the beginning of a journey, one that would take me far from where I started and make me the person I am today. It wasn't a journey of finding my way back to them, but finding my way back to myself. It was one of those hot summer days in Alabama, where the air feels thick, like you're walking through molasses. I remember leaning back against the car window, half asleep with my headphones in, trying to drown out the endless hum of the highway. My parents, Magnus and Celeste, sat up front as usual, bickering about something probably about me. If I'm being honest, I'd long since tuned them out. We'd just spent the weekend visiting my older sister Vivian at college. It was a usual visit, the kind where everyone pretends that everything's fine, even when it's not. Vivian, being the perfect daughter, pretended to have it all together. Mom, on the other hand, would casually drop passive-aggressive comments about how I should be more like Vivian, how I should have better grades, be more responsible, more this, more that. Dad, as usual, barely acknowledged either of us, unless it was to bark an order. It had been a normal weekend, but I could already feel the tension building inside of me, the nagging sense that no matter how hard I tried, I was always going to fall short. I'd felt that way for as long as I could remember. As the car slowed down, my thoughts wandered, and I cracked my eyes open, hoping to escape the endless cycle of criticism. That's when I saw it. The train station. It sat just off the highway, old and rusted, like a relic from another time. Its faded, peeling signs seemed almost symbolic of everything in my life. At that moment, outdated, forgotten, ignored. Dad pulled into the parking lot without a word. The car came to a stop beside a couple of old vending machines. And without even looking at me, he said, "Go grab me a soda." I blinked, confused for a second, as if I hadn't heard him correctly. What? Mom, without turning around, flashed me one of those forced smiles that didn't reach her eyes. "Get your father a drink, honey, and grab me a water, too." I sighed, rolling my eyes, but I didn't argue. Arguing never worked, and I knew better than to try. I pushed open the door, stepping out into the oppressive heat that hit me like a wall. The sun was relentless, and the pavement beneath my feet felt like it was on fire. But I didn't care. I didn't care about much of anything at that point. The vending machines sat next to the station entrance, their colors long since faded, and decals peeling from years of exposure. I dug through my pocket for a crumpled $5 bill, shoving it into the machine and pressing the buttons for the drinks. The machine groaned as it struggled against time, finally spitting out a lukewarm soda and a bottle of water. I turned around, expecting to see the car waiting for me like it always had, but the lot was empty. I froze for a moment, blinking and staring at the empty space where the car should have been. Maybe they had just moved it to another spot, I thought, trying to make sense of it. Maybe they were out of sight. But as I scanned the parking lot, I knew deep down that something wasn't right. My heart pounded in my chest as I checked my phone. My stomach dropped when I saw the text from Mom. "Let's see how long it takes you to get home. Consider this a lesson in problem solving." The world seemed to tilt beneath me. My fingers fumbled as I tried to call them straight to voicemail. I tried again and again. Each time, the same hollow beep echoed in my ear. The sinking feeling in my gut grew heavier, the realization hitting me with a cold clarity. They weren't coming back. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an accident. They'd left me here on purpose. I stood there for a long moment, the weight of it all sinking in. But it wasn't the shock of it that hit hardest. It wasn't the heartbreak, no, it was the eerie calm that settled over me. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't devastated. This wasn't the first time they had done something like this. When I was 13, they'd locked me outside in the middle of a storm because I forgot to take the trash out. At 14, they made me walk 6 miles home from school in the pouring rain, as punishment for missing the bus. This was just another twisted lesson, another way of proving that I was disposable, another attempt to break me. But this time, I wasn't going to let them. I glanced around the station, and a handful of people moved about, oblivious to the 16-year-old girl standing there alone, with nothing but a crumpled bill and a growing sense of rage. I wasn't going to wait for them. I wasn't going to play their game anymore. I checked my pocket. I had $140s, my savings from a summer job. Not much, but enough. I marched up to the ticket counter where an old man behind the counter barely looked up as I approached. "Where's the nearest bus station?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. He pointed down the road, couple miles that way. I nodded, already moving, when my phone buzzed again. Another text from Mom. "Don't you dare call your aunt. Your father says you need to figure this out on your own." I blocked the number without thinking. Then I did exactly what they told me not to do. I called Marigold. The phone rang twice before her familiar voice answered Abigail. I swallowed hard. "Marigold, can you help me?" There was a pause, and then her voice sharpened with worry. "Where are you?" "I'm standing at a train station," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "They left me here." Her breath caught on the other end. "Stay right there, sweetheart. I'm coming to get you." And for the first time in a long time, I felt like someone cared. It wasn't a rescue, not really. It was more like the first step toward me taking my life back. Marigold arrived that night. She didn't say much, but when she wrapped her arms around me, it was like the world slowed down for just a moment. She didn't have the answers, and I didn't expect her to. But there was something about the warmth of her hug that reminded me I wasn't as alone as I had felt. I didn't go home after that. Instead, I stayed with Marigold for a few weeks. Her house was small, but it was cozy in a way that made me feel safe. It was a far cry from the cold silence of my parents' house. But it was a start. I knew, though, that staying in that small town forever wasn't an option. I had to make something of myself far away from the grip of my past. The first few months weren't easy. I picked up shifts wherever I could. Grocery stores, fast food, anything that would pay the bills. I learned the hard way how to stretch every dollar until it screamed. At night, I collapsed into a bed that wasn't mine, feeling the ache in my body from working too much. But at least I was earning my keep. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I eventually found a tiny studio apartment in the city. It was cramped and smelled faintly of mold, but it was a roof over my head, and it was mine. I remember my first night there, sitting on the floor, eating a sandwich I bought with my last $3. I didn't have much, but it didn't matter. I had everything I needed to start again. My determination, a few savings from my summer job, and the quiet promise to myself that I would never go back to the life my parents had planned for me. The next few years were a blur of working 3 jobs, studying at night, when I could barely keep my eyes open, and scraping together enough to keep the lights on. I worked hard. I fought for every scrap. But somewhere in that struggle, I started to build something. I didn't know what it was at first. Just a tiny spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, I could make something real. Something that was mine. Something that no one could take from me. And then one day, after years of hard work and late nights, I walked across the stage and graduated college. The crowd cheered, but all I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. I had done it. I had made it through, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. My journey didn't end with a diploma. It was just beginning. I was determined to build something more than just a paycheck. I wanted a legacy, something that could stand the test of time. That's when Haven Developments started to form in my mind. A company built on resilience, built on the idea that no matter where you came from, no matter what had happened to you, you could make something of yourself. I started small, just a few projects, taking on any work I could get my hands on. My reputation grew slowly at first, but with each success, I felt myself gaining confidence. The fear of failure, the fear of being nothing started to fade into the background. With every project, I was building something stronger than the last. I was building a life that no one could take away. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were times when I felt like everything was falling apart. I remember sitting in my office late at night, staring at the piles of paperwork, the bills, the endless to-do lists. I had moments where I wanted to throw in the towel and run far, far away. But then I remembered why I started. I remembered how it felt to be abandoned, how it felt to have nothing. I refused to go back to that place. I refused to let my past dictate my future. As Haven Developments grew, so did my confidence. I started making bigger decisions, hiring employees, taking on bigger clients. The fear of being seen as an imposter never truly left me. But with each new success, it got quieter. Until one day, I realized it wasn't there at all. I was building something real, something that mattered. And it was all because I had refused to let them break me. It wasn't just about the business, though. It was about proving to myself that I was more than what they had told me I was. I wasn't just a mistake. I wasn't just a problem to be solved. I was someone with value, with dreams, and with the strength to fight for them. But no matter how much I achieved, no matter how far I went, I knew one thing: the past had a way of creeping back in when you least expected it. And so, as I stood there looking out over the city from my office at Haven Developments, I should have been proud of how far I had come. But instead, there was a nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach. It wasn't fear. It was something else. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. The past was about to catch up with me. It had been years since I'd heard from my parents. 2 decades to be exact. 2 decades of silence, of distance, of me carefully building a life they weren't a part of. And for those 2 decades, I didn't miss them. I had a life, a family of my own. Marigold, my friends, the team at Haven Developments. I had created something for myself, something that was mine, far removed from the chaos and dysfunction they represented. But then, that morning, the phone rang. My first thought was that it was a wrong number, that someone had dialed by mistake. But when I saw the name on the screen, my heart skipped a beat. It was Vivian. I hadn't spoken to her in years either. She was my sister, yes, but it was complicated. She had always been the one who tried to smooth things over between me and our parents. Always the peacemaker. But when I walked away, she stayed. She stayed. And I couldn't help but wonder if she resented me for that. The phone rang twice before I finally answered. Abby Vivian's voice was hesitant, as if she wasn't sure if I'd even pick up. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the nerves that had suddenly taken hold of me. I hadn't heard her call me Abby in years, and it felt like a distant memory. Yeah, it's me. What's going on? They found you, she said quickly, the words tumbling out in a rush. Mom and Dad. They've been asking about you. They need your help. The words hit me like a punch in the gut. They needed my help. After all this time, after everything they did to me, I sat back in my chair, staring out at the city below, trying to steady my thoughts. Help with what? My voice was flat, emotionless. Vivian hesitated, and I could almost hear her fumbling for the right words. It's bad, Abby. They're in trouble. Dad lost a lot of money gambling, and Mom's racked up some serious debt. The house is in foreclosure. They need you. The world around me seemed to freeze for a moment. I couldn't wrap my mind around what I was hearing. After 20 years of silence, of pretending like I didn't exist, now they were asking for help. What did they think I was? A lifeline to fix their mess. I had worked so hard to get to where I was. I had fought for everything I had. And the idea of them coming back into my life now, after all the pain, all the years of neglect, felt like a betrayal. I could feel my pulse quicken as anger began to rise in my chest. Vivian, You don't understand. They left me at a train station when I was 16. Do you remember that? Do you remember how they just abandoned me like I didn't matter? My voice trembled slightly, but I forced it to remain steady. Vivian sighed deeply. I know, Abby, I remember, but they're desperate now. They don't know where else to turn. They need you. Please, just listen to them. Just listen to. The words felt like nails in my chest. Desperation. Desperation. That's what it was. They were trying to manipulate me again. This wasn't about reconciliation. It wasn't about fixing our broken family. No. It was about them needing something. Money, control, whatever it was. I closed my eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. I'm not asking you to forgive them. Vivian continued, her voice breaking. I just want you to listen. Listen. The word echoed in my mind. Listen. When had anyone ever listened to me? When had anyone ever cared about what I needed, what I wanted? They hadn't, not when I was 16, not when they'd left me there, stranded. The anger bubbled up inside me, but I pushed it down. I wasn't going to let them control me anymore. I wasn't going to let Vivian or anyone else make me feel guilty for choosing myself. I'm not their daughter anymore, Vivian. I said the words coming out of my mouth like a final declaration. I haven't been for a long time. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone, and I could almost feel the weight of it. I knew Vivian was struggling. I could hear the tears in her voice when she spoke again. But they're still our parents, Abby. They need us. I don't owe them anything. I replied, my voice calm but firm. I've already paid the price, and I'm done. The line went quiet again. Vivian didn't speak for a long time, and I could feel the distance between us growing. There was so much unspoken between us, so many years of silence and pain, but I wasn't going to back down. Not this time. I have to go, I said, finally cutting the conversation short. I'm sorry, Vivian, but I can't help them. I hung up the phone, the weight of the conversation settling heavily on my shoulders. It wasn't easy to walk away from her, from the sister I once loved, but it was the only choice I had left. I couldn't allow myself to be dragged back into the past, back into the web of guilt and manipulation that my parents had always spun around me. But even as I hung up the phone, a part of me wondered, was I making the right choice? Was I strong enough to say no to the people who had once been everything to me? The next morning, I walked into the office with a heavy heart, expecting the usual hustle and bustle of a busy work day. But as soon as I stepped through the door, I could feel something was off. The air felt thicker, heavier. The receptionist Jenny looked up from her desk, her face pale, her brows furrowed in concern. You might want to see this, she said quietly, handing me her phone. I took it from her without thinking, scanning the screen. My stomach dropped when I saw what was in front of me, Facebook posts. Multiple ones, some from familiar names, some from strangers, all echoing the same thing. Our daughter abandoned us in our old age. After everything we sacrificed for her, we raised her to be strong. And this is how she repays us, heartless. I felt like I'd been slapped across the face. My hands trembled as I read the words again, the venom in them stinging more than I expected. But then the familiar coldness washed over me. The same coldness I'd felt all those years ago, when I stood at that train station. The same feeling I had when they first turned their backs on me. I set the phone down slowly, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Of course they would do this. They couldn't manipulate me into helping them, so they'd try to ruin me in a different way. They were turning the world against me again. Jenny, is this going viral? I asked, already dreading the answer. She nodded. It's spreading. Some of our clients have already seen it. They're worried. A few have even left bad reviews about the company, calling you a fraud and a cold-hearted businesswoman. My mind raced, my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't just a few random posts. This was a full-scale attack. And it wasn't just about money anymore. It was about control. It was about making me the villain in my own story, just like they always had. For a moment, I felt like I was back there again, standing at that station, waiting for them to come back to tell me I wasn't worthless. But no, not this time. I wasn't that 16-year-old girl anymore. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I'm not going to let them do this. Not this time. I could feel the fire building inside me. It wasn't fear. It was anger, yes, but it was something more. It was a sense of clarity of purpose. They were trying to destroy my business, to destroy everything I had worked for, everything I had built from nothing, but I wasn't going to let them win. Not this time. I grabbed my phone and dialed a number. I hadn't dialed in years. The lawyer who had helped me with contracts when I first started Haven, I needed to fight back. I couldn't let them get away with this. As the phone rang, I felt the weight of my parents' words from years ago creeping back into my mind. You owe us. Their voice echoed in my head, but this time it wasn't just a memory. It was a challenge I was ready to face, head on. David the lawyer picked up on the third ring. Abigail, I've been expecting your call. I saw what's going on. You're right to be concerned. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I need to sue them. I want to go public. They're trying to destroy my life, and I'm not going to sit back and let them. David paused, clearly surprised by my sudden decision. You're sure going public is risky? It could backfire, especially since the public perception is already so negative. I'm sure, I said firmly. They've been trying to ruin me for years. They've crossed a line and I'm done playing defense. David sighed, his voice softening. All right, I'll start the paperwork, but just remember, this won't be easy. I nodded, even though I knew he couldn't see me. I've spent my whole life fighting. I'm not going to stop now. After hanging up, I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. The calm I had fought so hard to cultivate in my life had been shattered. I couldn't let my parents manipulate me anymore, not in the way they always had. But the truth was, I was exhausted. I had worked so hard to create a life that was mine, and now it felt like it was slipping away piece by piece. But something had changed in me. I wasn't that scared little girl anymore. I wasn't the one waiting for permission to live my life. I was the one in control now. The days that followed were a blur of emails, meetings, and endless calls. But no matter how many times I told myself to focus on my work, my mind kept going back to the mess my parents had created. It was like they were everywhere. The smear campaign online, the fake emails being sent to my investors, the rumors spreading like wildfire. I had to step in, had to fight back. By the time the legal documents arrived, I had already decided how I would respond. I wasn't going to hide behind closed doors or behind my lawyer's desk. No, this time I was going to take control, show the world exactly who they were and what they had done. It wasn't easy. The phone calls from investors, the bad reviews flooding in, the whispers behind my back. It was all so overwhelming. The weight of it felt like it might crush me. But then I'd think back to the girl who had been abandoned, who had walked 6 miles home in the rain, who had fought tooth and nail for every inch of ground she gained. And in those moments, I found the strength to keep going. I wasn't about to let them tear everything down. One evening after a particularly difficult meeting, I sat at my desk staring at the computer screen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I prepared to write the public statement that would expose everything, the truth about my parents, their abuse, their manipulation, and the lies they had spread to ruin me. The anger I had kept bottled up for so long surged within me. But this time it wasn't destructive. It was power. I began typing. For years I've carried the weight of a past that I didn't ask for. A past filled with manipulation, abandonment, and betrayal. I spent decades trying to move on, build something real for myself, something that wasn't tied to the toxicity of my childhood. But now my parents have decided to return, not because they miss me, but because they need something. They need money. They need control. They've tried to use guilt to manipulate me, and when that didn't work, they turned to public lies and legal threats. but I will not be their pawn. I will not let them destroy everything I've worked for. My fingers flew over the keyboard as I typed the rest, my heart pounding in my chest. It wasn't just the truth, it was my truth, and it felt like a weight was being lifted with each word. I wasn't just telling my story anymore. I was taking control of it. Once I finished, I stared at the screen for a long moment, my reflection staring back at me. Was I really doing this? Was I ready to face the fallout, the public scrutiny? But as I thought about everything my parents had put me through, everything they tried to take from me, something inside me hardened. I hit post. I couldn't take it back now. And as the post began to spread, I didn't feel fear. I felt something else, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. Freedom from their hold over me. Freedom from their lies. And freedom from the guilt that had followed me for so long. The next few days were a whirlwind. My phone rang non-stop. Emails flooded in. But this time the response was different. People started reaching out, not just strangers, but clients, investors, even former colleagues. They were supporting me, applauding my decision to speak out. The narrative had shifted. The tide had turned. But it didn't stop there. As the public began to turn against my parents, I started to hear from people who had gone through similar experiences. They'd been abandoned by their families, manipulated, lied to, and they were all cheering for me, for the strength it took to stand up and fight back. And then a week later, Vivian called. Her voice was different this time. Quiet and defeated, Abby. They've lost everything, she said, barely above a whisper. Their house is gone, their money gone. It's all falling apart. For a moment I felt a flicker of something, regret maybe, or even sympathy. But then I remembered the pain, the years of silence, the abandonment. They'd made their choices just as I had made mine. That's on them, Vivian, I replied, my voice firm. They did this to themselves. There was a long pause before she spoke again. They're saying it's your fault, you know, that you're the reason everything fell apart. I let out a breath, the bitterness creeping back into my chest. Of course they are. They always need someone else to blame. I could hear her tears on the other end. How can you be so cold, she whispered. I swallowed hard, the knot in my throat tight. I'm not cold, Vivian. I'm just done. I can't fix what they broke. I'm not responsible for them anymore. The conversation ended with nothing more than silence. I didn't want to argue with her. She wasn't ready to see things the way I did. But I had to let go. I couldn't carry their baggage anymore, no matter how much it hurt.